Hey friends, thanks for tuning in. Welcome back to the More Jody podcast. I'm so thankful that you're here today, and I just want to remind you, when certain things from these episodes hit or you think of a friend, I just ask that you share this podcast with them. I want to grow this podcast bigger and better all the time, and I need your help with that. So I just wanted to say that off the hop. So thanks for being here today. Today we are stripping it all away. It is the beginning of January, and I've been working on redoing my life vision in the last 2.5 weeks. And this episode feels tender to record and quite honestly unfinished. And I want to say that right now. So I'm not starting January with a shiny vision board or perfectly articulated plan for the year, but sort of from a place of confusion, scarcity, and honestly a little bit of panic. So this year, I'm not teaching you from the finish line. I'm inviting you into the middle. And I almost didn't record this episode because the voice in my head kind of said I should wait till I had more clarity. I always ask myself things like, would Ed Milet do this? Or, like other podcasters, like what would they do in this situation? But today I was listening to one of Ed's podcasts when I was in the woods, and he was talking. It was an episode from January 10th, and he was just saying, like, guys, this is stuff I'm working on too. And so if I want to be always leading with humility and honesty, I got to live that out, right? So, and I think the voice that says you should wait till you have clarity, that's a pattern I'm trying to break, right? That's not what I want to do. So today I want to bring you into the real work I've been doing, not the outcome, not the lesson wrapped up in a package with a little bow, but the moment where things really cracked open for me. So the last week of December, I sat down to prep for my January mastermind, something I was restarting and really excited about, thinking this is going to be quick and easy life vision refresh. And I opened my notebook to rewrite my vision for 2026. So the last time I'd done this was in 2019. I use an app called Asana, Asana, and it's a project management app. It's a really great tool for this, I think. And in 2019, I had an executive coach from Novus Global that I was working with actively. And so when I had written that down, this was before the world shut down in 2020, before things changed in ways I didn't understand and wouldn't for a while, and before life got really full. So when I wrote this, my kids were 6 and 8. So it's wildly different now. They're 13 and 15 here right away. So back then I was planning for full swing business. I was the breadwinner. I was expected to be out of the house at least 9 hours a day. I was living out the version of my Vancouver Island plan, a life I first imagined years earlier, sitting at a desk in Edmonton in the dead of winter. So my first iteration of a life vision, I want to say I did in 2016. Okay, so 2019 was my second iteration of that, and this is now my third. So basically in 2019, I've stepped into and I'm living my dream life. My husband and I had kind of switched places. He was working part-time, I was working full-time, that sort of thing. And so I hadn't questioned this vision or this dream in a long time. And when I started this exercise in December, it felt weird and stuck because it's hard work to actually look at yourself honestly and admit what isn't working anymore. And what surprised me most was how detached I'd become from my own vision and my own goals and my own reality. My 2019 vision was governed by becoming. It was full of becoming energy. I believed I became who I was meant to be by saying yes, stepping forward, and building something meaningful. I wanted to lead, to inspire, to be seen doing work that mattered. I was really, if I'm really honest, I really cared about the validation from others. That was I can see that. I don't directly say it in that vision, but I can feel it when I read it. So I wanted influence, growth, visibility, impact. I wanted to live boldly for Jesus, and I wanted agency. I wanted to know my life was within my control. And honestly, your life's never really within your control. Which is kind of funny. We can make all these plans, right? But my life is never really within my control. But honestly, I did a lot of the things in that vision, and it wasn't hustle for hustle's sake. It was activation, and it worked. But here's what changed. I don't regret my 2019 vision, but I graduated from it. Because while the truth of that vision was right, the structure wasn't built to sustain me long term. So that hustle mentality of my late 30s and what I'm going to move into today and talk about is a totally different way of living. I didn't name the season I was in. I didn't have one governing truth kind of guiding my decisions. I built my life from output instead of from what I know in my body. That's something I'm going to start talking a little bit more is there's certain things you just know in your knowing. I don't know if you hear that and you're like, what are you talking about? Or if you hear that and you're like, yes, there's certain things over the last years that I'm like, I know this to be true of how my body responds in certain different situations. And it's a great thing, I think, to feel like these are things I know for sure about my body and my responses and my needs. I confused goals with standards. I had no clear way back to come back to my vision when I drifted. And when life got fuller, right? Because we all had that time where, like, my kids are young, right? At 6 and 8, they really didn't have a lot going on, in the evenings. They had hockey on the weekends, so it was pretty simple. But then the pandemic hit and everything went dead silent. And we all loved it until we were like, Kate, let's get back to regular life. But we did love it for a while, right? And then it was like shortly after that, my kids got really heavily involved in their sports and things just got like they are now insane. So we did kind of have this, if you're looking at a graph, right, it would go up and then down and then up again. And so it's kind of a roller coaster that way. But when life got fuller, I just kept adding stuff instead of regulating. So I never slowed down. I mean, there were a few elements in my life. I've always been like a really active singer and stuff, or teaching Sunday school at church and things like that. I did pull those things out of my life. So I did make some adjustments, but my governing truth now is different. Not because the old one was wrong, but because this season requires something deeper in my life. So in 2019, I believed freedom came from courage, effort, and expansion. I was learning to step up and step into who I wanted to be in 2019. I think I was managing 14 people, I think at the time. Shortly after that, I think in 2021, there were like 35 people across the island that I was managing with my partner, Teresa. So I was just really stepping into all of that. Now I'm at a place where I'm in sales. I have no leadership responsibility. It's wildly different and I love it. So there are different times, like I love people so much that I might want to lead them again, but like things have really changed for me. So in 2026, I know freedom comes from telling the truth, actively recognizing what is true in my body, what my body needs, and regulating my life around what's true. That kind of sounds like vague at first. I have to be careful sometimes because I feel like I sometimes have this like a CEO way of talking where you say words, but you've really said nothing. That's like my big pet peeve with CEOs. And then I'm always like, do you know you said nothing just now? Because I saw that. So anyways, I have to be careful not to talk like that. But this is a 2-part series, this episode, and then I'm going to do another one called How to Create the Life Vision That You Want. So we're going to unpack what that actually means, what truth costs, how regulation looks in real life, and why discipline isn't punishment. It's love. That's like, I want to say that again. Why discipline isn't punishment. It's love. Because in the midst of this last, I guess, 7 years between these two visions, I would check in on the vision. I might read it once a year. Sometimes I would read it every quarter. Sometimes I was really dialed into it. And sometimes I would totally leave it behind. Frequently, I'd look back at it the next January and be like, yeah. And I didn't really feel the need to edit it or, look at it again. But I wasn't super connected to the outcomes. And cool enough, I did end up accomplishing a lot of what was on that life vision, but I think I could do way better if I was way more connected to it. So just to talk about kind of the process, like the vision that unraveled is as I started writing and redoing this life vision, something became painfully clear. So I don't lack ambition, I don't lack ideas, and I don't lack effort, but I do lack focus. So I've spent years focusing on too many things at once, building, growing, doing. And because of that, I don't feel successful at any one thing in a way that actually satisfies me. I have a lot of achievements and I've gained some wisdom in different categories, but this realization was mirrored back to me in my mastermind, in my conversations with Aaron on the Relentless and Real podcast as well. And instead of feeling defensive, I think I've really felt seen, like validated and understood, because it explains something I've been quietly carrying, that I don't finish things the way I want to. I don't land where I think I should. And over time, that kind of erodes confidence. I don't know if you guys have noticed this, but your mind can say things to you that aren't true. So you can have a thought come in, and you can usually, like, we think our thoughts are truth. I'll have a thought come in, and I'm like, that's not actually true. And then I'll now take my thought, usually pray in that moment, like, God, I take this thought captive to you and I want no part of it. If it's like a mean or a mean spirited or a negative thought or something that I can tell is going to lead me down a path I don't want. So I will take those thoughts captive. And that's how I do that. But I said to Erin on Relentless and Real, I said, I feel like I don't finish things. And she was like, what? You totally finish things. So it kind of made me wonder, is this a pivot? Do I pivot when I'm doing something, or do I not finish? And I had to painfully ask this question. And I set about listing my accomplishments. So I determined that I do finish things, fitness goals, work targets, starting and running a successful Airbnb. But when it comes to my body, this podcast, financial freedom, or leaving a legacy, which is really important to me, I'm confused and I stall. And I think it's because they seem too vast, too vague, and too hard to figure out. So once I stripped away the goals and the plans and the productivity talk, I was left staring at a much harder question. Who am I when I'm not chasing something? And honestly, without achievement, I didn't know who I was anymore. And that realization was sobering and necessary. So then my identity starts to kind of shake. I'm trying to update this vision. I'm like, this is really hard to do. And the question that unsettled me more than I expected, because I realized how much of my identity was wrapped up in doing, producing, building, adding. And if someone asked me where I think their value comes from, I wouldn't say any of those things, but I was living like that was true. And when things felt uncertain, I didn't slow down, I would speed up. So when I feel panicked, I don't simplify, I add more. So it's kind of funny sometimes, because I even tried to walk out my stress over the holidays, and my body made it very clear that wasn't the answer. I had a friend who she'd been doing runs and stuff, but she had a lot of family visiting. And I said to her, you know what, why don't we commit to each other so that we actually make sure we're outside in the fresh air, moving our bodies. And I said, if you win, you buy me a 9-ounce glass of wine, or vice versa. We'll go to dinner together. And then she's like, no, I'm going to win, and we're going to do brunch, or we're doing a whole meal. I was like, okay. So as soon as she said, like, I'm going to win, I was like, I can't let her win. If she wins, like, it's like it means something so different in me than in other people. So anyways, I ended up doing over 87 kilometers in 12 days. Like, it was ridiculous. And it really shone a light on, like, I don't even know how to say it, like the insanity that is Jody. So adding more is my default, but all it does is further tax an already stressed system. And then in doing this work and chatting with my mastermind friend Jess, or chatting with Aaron from Relentless and Real, and asking them questions about how they saw me, I started to realize, I think Aaron said, I feel like your body is just hanging on by a thread. And I was just like, that's absolutely the truth. So my instinct, when it should be to pause, isn't to pause. It says, great, let's add something else. And this isn't new. When I'm stressed, I bake, not one thing, multiple things. It looks wholesome, it looks productive, but it's avoidance dressed up as capability. And seeing that pattern clearly without judgment and with some affirmation from friends that love me deeply was so humbling. So here's where something shifted for me. in one of my conversations, I put my vision from 2019 into ChatGPT. I put in the vision from 2026 and I said, what am I missing? Can you see if I'm missing anything? And I call her Joanne. Joanne was like, oh, you didn't make any category for friendship, which I don't need a category for friendship. Thanks, Joanne. But I've really got that one covered deeply and purposefully. But she said, you also have nothing around rest. And I literally thought that was hilarious. Like, why do I need a category of my life vision committed to rest? And then she said, you have too many competing goals, and that makes it probably really hard for you. So then I was like, listen, Joanne, I actually have so many competing goals, and I have a really hard time slowing down. And I started telling ChatGPT a whole bunch of stuff about my tendencies. And she said, Jody, rest is not a reward. It's medicine. And then I stopped and I cried. And when I say rest, I mean any kind of sitting, reading, relaxing. Like, I rarely stop moving. But I've been treating rest like something I earn after success, after consistency, after discipline, after I finish all the things I decided make me great. But medicine doesn't work that way. You don't wait till you're healthy to take it. And suddenly, so much made sense. My body, my nervous system, my inability to follow through when everything feels like too much. I wasn't failing. I was desperately depleted. So what I'm seeing now is that underneath all of this was a scarcity mindset. I didn't know where I was operating from. And scarcity says, if I don't keep moving, I'll fall behind. If I choose one thing, I lose everything. If I slow down, I'll miss my moment. So I added more projects. Like, you have one podcast, why not two? More ideas, more pressure. And somehow I expected peace to show up in the middle of this chaos, and it didn't. So I started to pray about it. So instead of building a bigger vision this year, I'm doing something radically simpler. I'm asking God questions I've avoided asking because they don't produce immediate outcomes. God, who do you want me to be? God, what did you make me for? God, will you show me what you see when you look at me? Not what can I accomplish? What can I manage? What can I juggle? Just who am I? Because when everything else is stripped away, my faith tells a much simpler story than the one I've been living. I'm not loved because I perform well. I'm not secure because I stay busy. I'm not valuable because I can hold it all together and complete more tasks than most people. Just swear is like, my connection to accomplishments, like even on a to-do list, like, I'm just so proud of myself when I've like crossed off a million things. Like, nothing makes me feel better. It's so ridiculous, but I already belong. I'm already chosen. I'm already known. I'm already held. And everything flows from that, from the God who loves me, or it doesn't last. So I believe in always taking steps of faith forward and praying over everything. I try hard, often failing, to live a life surrendered to God. And that means like daily, verbally saying, God, I give my life to you. Help me to live for you. I trust that I'm headed in the right direction. And that if the direction I'm headed in doesn't match what God wants for me, I will face closed doors and redirection. And I want that. That's important to me. Psalm 37 verses 23 and 24 says, the Lord makes firm the steps of the one who delights in him. Though he may stumble, he will not fall, for the Lord upholds him with his hand. So if I write out my goals, my dreams, my standards, and then commit my life to living for the Lord, I know he will hold me when I screw up or when I succeed, and all along the way. So regardless, I'm not alone, and that gives me so much peace. So this is where I want to bring you in. I want to take you on this journey of discovery with me, not as someone who has answers, but as someone willing to ask better questions. So have you ever written a life vision? It's incredibly powerful. And it actually, once it's done, like it was gross trying to write it for the last 2 weeks. But even today, I'm out on the trails with my friend's dog, my little buddy Gus, and I thought of something today. So it just keeps building. I thought to myself, you know what? I want to make sure every area of my life vision has outcomes attached of who I want to be when I'm 50. This just came to me today. So once you've written it, it keeps building. It keeps, and I want to be more connected to it. I don't want to be disconnected from it. So if you're listening to this and you're like, I don't even know where to start, that's okay. Awareness is the work right now. And if you have done this, did it uncover things you didn't expect, things that maybe you didn't want to see, or patterns you'd rather explain away? Because once you start unwrapping this gift, man, you can't stop. You can carefully peek and put the paper back on, but eventually you have to see what's underneath. And that's what brought me to tears trying to do this, because I felt so stuck. And my hope and my prayer is that everything unnecessary is stripped away. And what's left is not disappointment, but treasure. I'm so happy that I realize now that my last vision was about doing, and that now I'm rewriting what my vision and my purpose is. And it's going to be treasure, something beautiful, something true, something God designed and given back to Him. So this year isn't about becoming more impressive. It's about becoming more honest. So in my next episode, I'm going to walk you through how I'm rebuilding my life vision, from not from hustle or goals, but from the body up, from my knowing. Oprah has a book called What I Know for Sure. And it's like, whether you like Oprah or not, she's cute. I don't know. Everything now is like political and crazy and polarized, but whatever. I listened to this book in my Audible a couple years ago, and it was just like a really beautiful, heartfelt read. And she talks about what she knows for sure. And that's kind of what I think about when I write a vision, and when I start to do this hard work. Another book that I've been listening to over Christmas break is called Undistracted by Bob Goff. Now, this man is like, if I could grow old and be like Bob Goff, he's one of the most beautiful people I've ever listened to as an author on Audible. His books are Everybody Always, Love Does, and Undistracted. And every single one of them, like especially Everybody Always and Love Does, make your heart smile. Like just the most beautiful, beautiful books. So those are kind of the inspiration for this vision and stuff. Is that's what I want to be committed to. It's about fewer things done with intention. Faith before striving, rest as medicine, and identity before outcomes. Because if all of a sudden all like my achievements are stripped away, I'm still valuable. I'm still worthy. God still loves me and created me for a divine purpose. So if you're starting this year feeling scattered, behind, or unsure of who you even are anymore, you're not alone. And you're very welcome here, right in the middle, right in the unwrapping. This is More Jody, and I'm glad you're here. Thanks so much for listening today. Please like, subscribe, share this episode with a friend, share it on Instagram, and thank you for being here. I look forward to sharing how to build your life vision on the next episode.